Welcome to an episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table from me, I have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Eric Dalala. And we are one step closer to the regular season because we're entering the final week of the preseason. The Broncos will go on the road to face New Orleans. Now, before we get to all that, there were some changes. Now you're on camera. You're ruining my intro. You're looking around. Come on now.
Am I? It's dark in here. It is just because I've been out in the sun all day.
You've been in the trenches. We call that being in the trenches.
I was in the field house watching practice inside. So actually, I'm just complaining for no reason.
Here I am trying to do like a solid intro to Broncos country. Let them know what's coming up on the podcast. But you know what? That's what the description is for. So you know what? Let's just get right into it.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, there were some changes. Devaughn Vele is now a Saint. It's interesting how these things happen, right? Because obviously the roster cuts are coming, and Devaughn Vele is someone that was highly regarded amongst all the coaches. And this decision did not come lightly, and that's something that head coach Sean Payton did mention.
Yeah, so for anybody who may have missed it, the Broncos got a 2026 fourth-round pick, 2027 seventh-round pick for Devaughn Vele, who was a seventh-round pick, of course, last year. And he's a guy that I believe had the third most receiving yards, just shy of 500 yards, around 40 catches, had a lot of third down receptions, a good player, a really strong contributor as a seventh-round pick. And that's why Sean Payton said after practice on Thursday, like you just kind of alluded to, that of all the trades he's had in his career, and I think he said this was the 26th trade he's been a part of involving a player, that this is among the two or three. It's in that top 10% of the most difficult trades he's ever made. And he listed off a whole litany of reasons, including the work ethic and all that with Devaughn Vele, but he just basically said, this is the type of player we want, right? And so there are times where a player's not a fit, or maybe the vision doesn't pan out the right way and it doesn't quite work out. This was not one of those cases. Vele obviously was working out well in Denver, and it's not like they were shopping him. So I think that there was this perception on Twitter maybe where like Broncos are looking. Yeah, Twitter. What's going on there? A lot of incorrect takes out there and reports about this. That the Broncos were kind of like looking to deal Vele, and it became clear that was not the case, that two or three teams reached out specifically about Vele, started as not so serious, and the Broncos actually weren't going to do the deal. And then it got to a point where when they offered that fourth-round pick, which is, we'll see how the season pans out, but that could be,
very crucial.
It could be a really important pick. I think one of the things that people have maybe not, there was a conversation about, okay, well, you're dealing Devaughn Vele, and this is a pick for next year's Broncos, right? Like you're getting rid of a player that can help you now for a pick that can help you later. But I was thinking about, what if mid-season at the trade deadline, the Broncos need somebody, they're playing well and they want to gear up and add to this roster. Maybe that pick becomes very important in getting a player midway through the season. So it's not just about next year's draft, but maybe it is, getting a good player next year. And so the value there, I think, stood out to the Broncos. Sean Payton talked about, hey, we might have 6 receivers, but we're probably only going to have 5 up on game day. And I think the way that you've seen guys like Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant step up, certainly Trent Sherfield, the way he was able to contribute on special teams, and I think carve out a little more of a role on offense than maybe people expected when he got here. It just got to a point where, from a state of the roster and you're balancing out the value, it just became a deal that the Broncos couldn't pass up. And I think, again, what Sean said was important. If they're not getting a fourth or the value's not there, they're not doing this. And they're keeping 6 receivers, and they're figuring out, how do we get different guys up on game day, or how's the roster constructed? But because of the value and where the room is, that's why this deal was done. And, we'll see how it all plays out. Maybe you only keep 5 receivers now. If that's the case, well, does that mean there's a spot for another running back or another defensive lineman or another safety? Like, you've got to use these spots. And it's always, Sean Payton says, it's not just the 53, it's the right 53. And so that's where this could be critical. Or he said, hey, we don't want to put Nate Adkins on short-term IR. We want to have him ready to go week 2 or week 3 and not miss him for an extra couple games. Maybe having this roster spot makes it easier to carry him for a couple weeks.
It's chess, not checkers. And that's saying a lot, because you always have to look at the bigger picture. And taking a step back and seeing, as you mentioned, the value that Vele brought, and understanding, yes, but we're in a position where we have to move things around. And obviously, I think having this deal done, as Sean Payton mentioned, it's not something that they saw coming, but it was something that they felt was better for the overall team. Again, the overall picture. And I think when you make these decisions as a head coach, a GM, you have to think of the long-term game. And as you mentioned, you're not really sure how things are going to play out. But I think when you're in a position to secure yourself stronger down the line, I think it's good to take it.
Yeah, and listen, I think what I'll be interested in now is how does this play out on the field? Because Vele was listed, as a second string receiver, but certainly was getting a lot of reps with the ones.
A lot of good plays last year too.
Yeah, whether it was, I think that play against the Falcons where he's running that in-breaking route, kind of that post there, and man made a heck of a catch. Or he makes
against the Chiefs has some good plays.
Yeah, he catches that touchdown, but there was also one where he makes a contested catch close to the ground. Like, his hands were really good. Now, what you've seen in training camp from Pat Bryant is that he is that similar type contested catch receiver. And I think based on what you saw against the Cardinals, it was like, man, this guy might be too good to keep off the field or keep out of the rotation. Like, we need to find a way to get this guy in there. Yeah. And so hopefully he can be that sure-handed, reliable guy that complements a Cortland Sutton. Obviously, one of the biggest things that I've been impressed with Troy Franklin is not just, the additions to his route tree and all that, but like, man, that guy's caught almost everything during training camp, and that was not necessarily the case always last year, right? And so that's been a big step forward. So you kind of put all those pieces together. It was kind of this perfect storm of all these things happen, but it was not like they were looking to get rid of Devaughn Vele, because the way that Sean Payton was talking about him, they clearly think really highly of him.
Yeah.
Hope he has a lot of success in New Orleans. More of a coincidence, Sean Payton said that he goes to the Saints, not like Sean Payton coached there, so that's why he's there. He said
he joked about it. He's like, I could be far, far away.
He could be in Alaska, and they'd be calling about this player. So, we'll see what else happens, right? Like Sean Payton kind of mentioned, we're not quite at the point yet where it's this full-scale calling or evaluating, but what teams are deep at certain areas, and it feels like maybe the Broncos are deep at running back. Does somebody call and inquire about a running back or a corner? Like, those are the types of things that maybe you'll pick up here in the coming days. But it's tough, right? Because a really well-liked guy, and Brandon Jones said that a guy that people really liked and respected in the locker room, but it was a deal that for the team, like you mentioned, it felt like the Broncos needed to take.
Brandon Jones also joked. He's like, well, if I see him on the field.
I thought that was, I thought he was going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll go easy on it. He was like, no, I'll hit these guys.
He was like, see you soon, Vele. I think, but again, it's such a short turnaround. Obviously, now they're going to see Vele very soon in New Orleans. They go play the Saints for the final game of the preseason. That game is at 11 a.m. Mountain Time on Saturday. So make sure you guys wake up. It's the last game before the home opener. But getting away from that excitement for a second, this last preseason game, what are you looking for, and what are kind of some things that are going to stand out? Because I know that Sean Payton also mentioned they're further along in how good their roster is, and now the tough decisions come.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple quick things. One is obviously the starters, right? And Sean Payton said expecting them to still play in that 8 to 10 play range. Could change, and I assume that means like if you go out and you have a big first drive, like maybe that changes, or if it's a short first drive and you want to add a little bit more time, like that could be part of it. But generally speaking, going to look at those 8 to 10 plays. So, I'm sure the first team offense, I think that they looked much better the last week, and especially against Arizona. But I'm sure they want to come out fast after kind of the opening in San Francisco in that game. So we'll be watching them for sure. Like, it's our last glimpse of Bo Nix, this offense, this starting defense before we get to week one. And Quinn Miners talked about, like, you need those reps because practice reps are not the same as game reps. The Broncos have talked again and again about a fast start. Quinn Miners was telling me it's more about a mentality than anything. And so this is your final tune-up here.
Yeah.
And before you really get into the game plan and you get going. So what do those starters look like? And do we see Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton out there together? That would be interesting to watch for sure. So that stands out. And then I just think big picture, it's how do these kind of end-of-the-roster battles develop? Sean Payton said it Thursday. There's still decisions to be made. Darren Rizzi talked on Wednesday about how special teams can be a deciding factor in his conversations with both George Paton and Sean Payton about what this is going to look like. But there's still roster spots out there to be taken. And, maybe you're auditioning not just for the Broncos, but for another team. Go out and have a big game and cement your place somewhere else if you're not going to make this roster in Denver. So I would say kind of at the top of my head, those stand out as like, and it's kind of like, I kind of just mentioned everything, right? Like, how are these starters going to play in their last action? And like, do you see Bo Nix hit Cortland Sutton? Do you see Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw flying around? Do you see another really impressive run from RJ Harvey? So those, I don't know, maybe that first half of the first quarter, like dialed into that. And then the rest of it's more to me about individual battles and like, okay, hey, if you're a running back, can you make one last case to be on this roster? If you're one of the reserve safeties, are you making one last push to be included? Sean Payton shared a story of, I believe in New York, a returner having a touchdown in the last preseason game. That was the thing that got him on the roster. And so everything matters.
And someone's always watching, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be the Broncos, but all 31 other teams are trying to fill something. And if something sparks, then a phone call will be made.
I also think, like, regardless of roster spot secured or on the bubble, it's just a cool moment for some of these guys. Like, you've got 90 guys on the roster, right? And like 53 of them are going to make it, and a handful more are going to go to the practice squad. And then there's some guys that, this might be it for their NFL dream, which is, it's a tough part of the business, but like, it's going to be cool for them looking back. Like, maybe it never goes further than this of, hey, I got to play in this preseason game. That was my last game ever. Like, let me just go out there and see what we got here. And so, I kind of think about that too, that it's about Bo Nix and it's about the offense, but it's also about, obviously not going to name guys, but like there's some guys on the back end of this roster that maybe they're fighting for their careers.
Yeah.
They're seeing, hey, can give it one more shot. And so you root for those guys and you hope they go out and perform well.
Well, Brian Jones did mention it just about the depth. He's specifically was talking about the secondary, but he said, like, with roster cuts coming, like, I am grateful that I'm not in that position as much anymore, because it's like, now that I kind of advanced at this point in my career, I can't imagine going through that. And he's gone through it, right? Because you have to start somewhere. And so I think it's great awareness from the veterans on this team to understand that each guy is fighting. And they say all the time, like, we love these guys, we support these guys, and wherever they go, like, we're always going to have that connection. And I think that's really spread across the coaches as well, understanding, like, we love all these guys, and it's one thing when they're all chasing an NFL dream. It's another thing when you're fighting for a spot, when you're in a position battle, when you're trying to find your place on a team. And as you mentioned, this could be on the road for some guys, and obviously we wish everyone the best, but it's like the part of the business that no one wants to talk about is kind of just like, all right, the 53-man roster, but there is the other side of that coin. And I think, as you mentioned, I do hope that they go out there and just enjoy playing in that environment, because, I mean, going to New Orleans, the last preseason game should be fun.
Yeah, and you mentioned at the end of the road for some, but maybe somebody makes a 53 for the first time, and maybe an undrafted rookie.
This is where all the great stories come from,
It's a tough time of year, but there is just as much of that joy and happiness as the other way around.
Well, we have a lot of joy and happiness because we're this much closer.
We're getting there.
To the start of the season, to the home opener against the Titans.
Back in May, I was like, let's just get there.
You're just trying to fast forward. You're just like, can we just fast forward? And now you're like,
it's over 2 weeks away.
Over? It's insane. But Broncos country, in case you were on vacation all summer, you were on holiday, you can go back and watch all the instant analysis from every single training camp practice, joint practice, and preseason game analysis on denverbroncos.com and on our YouTube page. So make sure you guys go ahead and check that out. And if not, we always have you covered on Altitude Advantage. So once again, I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table, we have our lead writer on denverbroncos.com, who is also going to, take a nap right before.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Oh, God, there's work to be done.
There's work to be done, and we got you covered as always. So make sure you guys check it all out on denverbroncos.com.